Fourth edition Dungeons and Dragons. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it was a flop. GameMasters here, and I know that a lot of people give fourth edition a fair amount of crap, but it really did have some good tools, specifically for the Dungeon Master. But the one we're going to go over today, I'd have to say that it's considered to be almost the holy grail of advice in that book. And I don't say that lightly. I say it because it can be applied to any given edition of Dungeons and Dragons, but it can also be applied to almost any other tabletop role-playing game out there.
Well, stop teasing us. Tell us what it is already.
Okay. It's called Player Motivations. Why it's so impressive is because it goes into detail about the various types of players. It presents to us why people play role-playing games. But two, it also details out how the DM can handle them to ensure a smooth flowing game. Listed out, it provides to us 8 types of players. We have the actor, the explorer, the instigator, the power gamer, the slayer, the storyteller, the thinker, and the watcher. The first is the actor.
Like Johnny Depp?
This kind of player is almost always going to provide a PC background that emphasizes personality over playstyle. They are likely to play according to their character's motivations and prefer scenes where they can act out in character, and generally prefer social encounters to combat. It goes on to explain how to engage this actor type of player. As a DM, you'll want to engage the PC's personality and tie in elements of their background into the adventure. Offer up plenty of role-playing encounters, key in on their characters' personalities, but two, ask the player to help create narrative campaign elements. But it also explains to the DM things to watch out for. Be aware of when the actor type of player is hogging the limelight and justifies certain actions because that's what their character would do. In essence, the actor is going to immerse themselves into their character, perhaps even speak in character with a different pitched voice.
I know all about that.
And they're going to be less focused on the mechanics and more focused on the game's narrative. The Explorer is up next.
I'll give you a pass on this one. That's too easy, Dora.
The Explorer likes to, well, explore. They like to push the setting into new places, locate lost items, and will attempt to learn about hidden facts and secrets. They like hearing the descriptions of the setting, stuff like, the cavern is dark, illuminated only by the flickering of your torch, which causes odd shadows to dance along the cavern wall. The dripping of water can be faintly heard in the distance. But then as much as they like the description, they are also just as eager to move along and explore. Engaging the explorer is quite easy. You'll want to introduce elements that encourage exploration. Reward them for taking steps of curiosity to explore. Use wicked cool props like actual real props, maps, give rich descriptions, but moreover, encourage them to actually make maps for the party. With the Explorer, however, you got to be a little careful that they don't sidetrack you into providing too many details. Then you have the Instigator. This player just wants to see things happen. They'll open an obviously trapped chest just to see what happens, or
Leroy Jenkins into a room of dragons.
Yeah, they might do that too. They take crazy risks and thrive in combat. They don't like sitting idly by, and when things seemingly grind to a halt, they're going to make stuff happen. To encourage the Instigator, you'll want to include objects and situations that encourage experimentation, and toss in NPC encounters that challenge even that player's curiosity. Just be sure that the Instigator doesn't actually charge into a fight with Orcus, or even their own party members, just to see what happens. The power gamer, as the term implies, focuses on min-maxing their character. They're calculating the exact number of experience they'll need to gain a level and are always first to try to grab that new magic item, whether they need it or not. They may show up session after session with a new supplement or homebrew material for their character to try to beef it up. and they really prefer combat over actual role-playing. You can engage the power gamer by providing a magic item as an actual adventure hook. Help them craft up a personalized character that won't be overpowered for the adventure that you have crafted. And you'll really want to keep an eye out for the power gamer to simply ensure that they don't take their fair share of, or more than their fair share of, the loot and treasure. And be sure that they don't begin treating the adventure that you've created as their own personal adventure, or that they don't treat the other party members as their lackeys. The Slayer player is similar to the power gamer in many respects, except they don't bother too much with min-maxing their character. They'll pick up whatever weapon is closest and just go for the stab or start slinging spells. They enjoy combat. They tune out a little when it comes to the actual story, but really get a kick out of the action elements. To keep them engaged, spring on an unexpected battle. Vary the combat up. Make some super simple. Make others a bit more challenging. Give them details as to what their attacks are doing. Describe that in vivid detail. And have this player keep track of initiative during combat. Be sure to keep an eye out for the Slayer player too, that they don't attempt to wreak havoc on every monster and NPC that they encounter. Some monsters are necessary to further the story after all. The storyteller.
Hey, wait a sec.
Keep your pants on.
I'm not wearing any pants.
The storyteller player gets into the narrative of the game in a similar way that the explorer does, except the storyteller sees the game as an ongoing chronicle of events and wants to see how the story unfolds. They will often be the player that provides a 5-page backstory, and they will work hard to ensure that their character fits into the narrative of the story itself. They love dramatic scenes and connection points, elements that appear in the first chapter and again later show up in the 8th chapter. You can keep a storyteller player engaged by paying close attention to their background and fitting bits and pieces of that into your overall narrative of the story. Include bits of their background into the plot. Have this player record or journal events in the game as it happens. You want to watch out, though, to make sure that they don't attempt to force their character to become the main character, or that they dictate to the other players what actions their character should be making.
But these are all...
The thinker player sits back and watches. They are looking at everything and at the same time attempting to look outside the box. Have a wall that needs climbing? Instead of a grapple and rope, they're going to remember about the potion of levitation they got from 3 sessions back. They are eager to solve puzzles and will weigh their options carefully to ensure the best possible outcome. Now, you can keep the thinking player engaged by including puzzles and encounters that require problem solving to get out of. You'll want to reward them with in-game benefits such as a potion of levitation. All the while you know that in 3 sessions' time there will be a wall that they need to climb. Think ahead here. You want to ensure that the thinking player doesn't dictate to the other players what they should be doing, and that they don't grind the game to a halt when weighing options. The Watcher player...
Is that Henry Cavill?
No, that would be The Witcher. I'm talking about Watchers.
Oh.
It's the type of player that just wants to be a part of a social group. They aren't as invested in the game, but approach it in a way that can facilitate fun. They may do goofy things like try to hurt a bunch of rabbits just because. They enjoy playing the game, but they are ultimately there for the companionship of peer interaction. You can engage them by prompting them when they are needed. You can always direct specific tasks to them and their character, and that in turn will keep them engaged with the game. But what you want to keep an eye out for is to make sure that that they don't distract the other players with a funny video on their phone.
Unless they're watching a GameMasters video, right?
Yeah, exactly. They may also get distracted by playing a video game or wandering off in search for the cat. Know too that any given player can be any one of these types. They can even shift during the course of the campaign or even within the given session that you are playing. But two, they can even be a combination of these player types. It's a lot to keep up with, but being able to identify the player types helps you to understand and keep them engaged, but also how to see when things may be going down a path that you don't exactly need it to go.
You said we'll get there, and for me to keep my pants on.
Okay. If you've never played 4th edition D&D, but you have played 5th edition, there is a very similar section in the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide called Know Your Players that also goes over much of the same information. It details briefly the acting, exploring, instigating, fighting, optimizing, problem-solving, and storytelling player, and while a lot of the information is directly pulled from 4th edition, 5th edition more or less glosses over the player types. I really like the layout that 4th edition provided. It details and defines the player type, but then it explains what you can do to keep that player type engaged and what to keep an eye out for so that they do not derail the game. And as mentioned, this is a detail that can benefit pretty much any other role-playing game system out there. As we've moved through these player types, do the players at your table come to mind? Can you immediately identify their player type and style from what we've just described? If you are a player, which type do you most see yourself playing like? The actor, the explorer, the storyteller, perhaps the power gamer? Let me know which of these you see yourself as down in the comments, because I'd really love to hear your take. Keep in mind, too, that this is not the only types of players out there. It's all that the Dungeon Master's Guide details, but you also have the metagamer. This is someone who pours through all the material, absorbs it, and attempts to circumvent every trap, every monster, and loot everything because they know exactly where everything in the module is. They'll attempt to use out-of-game knowledge to gain an advantage in the game itself. The best way to really engage this type of player is to change things up, and sometimes drastically. Instead of it being the rod of 7 parts, for example, perhaps now it's a rod of 9 parts. Instead of the sword +2 being in a trapped chest, perhaps the chest is no longer locked and trapped and is empty, but the sword is now in the possession of a skeleton that's down in the basement.
That's such a fun word. Sword.
The best way to keep an eye out on this player is to recognize when they are searching specifically for something that is purposely obscure in the adventure. Simply be aware when they are attempting to metagame. The rules lawyer is a type of player that enjoys order. They know the rules inside and out, or at least they like to think that they do. They'll attempt to use every rule in the book to justify an action. They'll argue rules as written over rules as intended every single time. To keep them engaged, you can always throw situations their way that can challenge their interpretation of the rules, but do be careful in doing this because it can easily derail a game and cause it to otherwise grind to a halt. For example, just attempt to bring up silvery barbs. Trust me, the rules as written versus rules as intended argument will most certainly come into play, and you can learn more about RAI versus RAW here.